This is the first video in my Learning Python in 60 Minutes class. Here we're going to start from the very beginning. We're going to look at building the traditional Hello World application. Now I'm going to show you a lot more than 3 lines of code to write Hello World. Well, 1 line of code to write Hello World. I'm going to show you how to build a function within Python. I'm going to teach you how to write a Python application that you can run from the command line. Heck, I'm even going to show you some command line parameters, variables, all the basics you'll need to understand any Python application. And I plan on doing it in under 10 minutes. So let's dive right in. So if we look at a code editor here, I'm using Visual Studio Code, which has turned out to be a really nice application for building Python. So I've set up a couple of empty folders that we'll use for building this course. And when I'm done, I'll publish them all on GitHub for you to use. And I'll include links on all my YouTube videos for this. So let's start on 0, since you know we're building applications and computer science, we always start with 0. So I'm going to call this a Hello World.py application. Now a few things I want to do. Let's disable lint. I want to make sure that I'm using Python 3. So let's look in code and say, okay, we're using Python. There's Python. And I want to make sure we're using Python 3. So let's start out by doing a very basic Hello World. One of the main ways that you can interact with humans in Python is just to print something. So we'll start super basic. We'll say print. Print is a function. And in Python, we pass parameters to functions. So in this case, we'll pass a string which says hello world. As you can see, I have a hard time typing and talking at the same time, but that's okay. So I need to view my integrated terminal here within Visual Studio Code. This will pop up a little terminal down here, and I can type Python 3, and it'll show you I am in a Python 3 environment. So since I'm writing this as a Python application that I want to run from the command line, I'm going to run it from the terminal here. I'm going to tell it I want to run Python 3.7 if so my code doesn't complain. So down here in the lower left hand corner, I can tell it what language I'm going to use. I have Python 2.7, 2.715, 2.715 64-bit. I have a whole bunch of different Python interpreters installed, so I'm going to use Python 3.7 since it is a very new version of Python 3. If you don't have Python 3 installed, just go online, go to python.org and find Python 3.7 for your application. All of this is going to run in a bash terminal or bash shell on a Apple MacBook Pro. So if anything on the terminal looks funny to you, if you're a Windows person, hopefully you can follow along. I haven't used Windows in a while, so let's go here. So what I'm going to do in my terminal, I'm going to type Python 3, and I know I have all the different Pythons installed, so I'm going to be specific and say Python 3.7, and I'm going to execute helloworld.com. Let me see if I can. Ooh, that makes the whole application bigger. That's okay. So when I run Python 3.7 space hello world, I see hello world come out in my standard output. That's all well and good, but we're typically not going to do that too much because in the real world we might have a variable. So I want it to say my name. So my name is Chris. You can email me at chris@vowie.com. Let's say my name, I'm going to create a variable here, and this variable's name is name. I could call it to whom and I'll call that Chris as well. You can call your variables almost anything, but this is how you create a variable within Python. Right now, I'm just going to show you about strings. In our next lesson, we're going to talk all about data types, but here, let's just make a string. So I have a few options if I want that string to come out at my terminal. So again, I can print the name. Here we'll print just Chris. You can see Chris here. Hello world came from this line above. Now what if I want to say hello Chris? So I have a few options. Let's start. We can say print hello, and then I can do a comma to my name. So what this is going to do, this comma suppresses the built-in new line character that the print command will end with. So if you hover over here, you're going to see a lot of things that you don't, we're not going to really dive into, but you can see things like the value, that ... means multiple values, separator is between values, end is at the end of the line, file is a way you can send it to your standard error, your standard output, flush means I'm going to flush it to that output immediately or not. We can cover all of that later, but for right now I want you to see the important part of this. Hello is that first value. ... means I can specify more than one value. So here, name is my second value. So let's run that again. And if you see I'm clearing this terminal on my Mac, I'm hitting Command K to make it go away. So here I'll run Python 3.7 hello world.py, and on my output I get hello world, Chris, hello Chris. Okay, these are pretty good. If I wanted to print out that exclamation point again, I can do something similar here, and I can do an exclamation point. And there we go. Now, here's where that separator is coming into play. So you can see here I have one space, here I have two, here I have two. Well, I don't want to mess with the separator parameter in the print function. So I'm going to show you about string formatting. So the way we can print out a single string to make it look better is do something like this. Print hello. I'm going to put in some brackets here and an exclamation point. And then I can format that name. Format means there's a whole lot to this, but in a simple sense, we can take a variable called name in this case and replace this placeholder with that variable content. So here, Command K to clear, Python 3.7 hello world, enter. Then we'll see I get hello Chris. That's all pretty good. So we can show you a few more things here. Heck, I'm going to change that. I'm going to change my comma, my space, my name, my exclamation point, and I can format all these things. So you would never do this. I'm just showing you the point. Hello, then I want a comma, then I want a space, then I want the name, then I want the exclamation point. This is the worst way to write hello world within Python, but you can see I'm able to print out that same line like that, which I'm doing by doing a variable substitution in here. One other really pretty slick thing within Python is I can say I'm building a formatted string. So you see this F here. I'm going to put it in front of a string, and I'm going to say something like hello. Then I can say name, exclamation point, and I can run that, and I get hello Chris again. Let me just show you again that I'm printing all these formatted. So you can see that that's exactly what I'm doing right here. See that last one, formatted hello Chris. Here, it's a shortcut to that format function by telling the interpreter that this is going to be a formatted string. This is just the name of the variable, and the string interpreter is going to build a string with that variable in it. Now, one quick point here is when you're going to write a Python application, typically you will have a little more structure to the application. So what I'm going to show you is how we can do that. So when you start a Python interpreter, it's going to interpret every line within your application. So there's a magical variable within Python called name. When you run your program, it's going to tell you what the name of this thing is. So that name gets set differently. The important part here, though, is if you want a block of code to only run if your application or your Python file is the main file being passed to the Python interpreter like this. So in this case, I'm passing the hello world file to my Python 3.7 interpreter. I can do a nice little block that says if name equals main. So I'm doing a little string comparison here that we'll talk about as we go on. But right now I can say print this is special code in my main function. Okay, so now I can run this again, and I see at the very end, no, I'm going linearly. I say, okay, my name here is that name here for main, and I am seeing this output for special code in my main function. Now, a couple of points I want to make. If you've never written Python, you will notice, sorry, let me state it again. If you've written other programming languages, such as C, C++, Java, I don't have any brackets around blocks of code. I don't have any of these around blocks of code like that, right? Instead, I have this little colon, and I have indented my next line of code. Now, my interpreter, since this is a built-in, my editor, it's doing 4 spaces right here. I'm personally a 2-space kind of person, but I'll let the interpreter or the editor do what it does. Doesn't matter. But what typically would happen is if you have a block of logic, you would put it into a function. So let's make a function. I'm going to cheat and call it main. Now, you'll see here in my main function, when I run this code, you'll notice that none of my output is that in my main function. Well, this is my special main function. Let's rename this my function. So this is less confusing. In my function. All right, so again, I'll run this code, and you'll see I don't have in my function being outputted anywhere down here. That's because all I've done is defined this function called my function. I haven't actually executed it. So I'm going to do something fun, and down here I'm going to call that function. And I do that like I do the print function all over the place by saying my function. So when I run this, I will now see in my function. I'm also going to take all of this code here and put it in another function. So I'm going to select it, tab it to indent it. Now, what do you think is going to happen when I run this program? Well, I haven't put in a call to another function yet. I still have my call to function, my function down here. So I know what's going to happen. I'm only going to see in my function. And this is a special code in my main function. Again, I'm going linearly, then I'm calling in my function. If I want to execute another function, I will call that. So now when I run my Python code, I will get all of that junk I had earlier. Now, Python's pretty cool. These are strings. I can print out all kinds of data types like lists or dictionaries or tuples, but we'll get into that as we go on. But here, I wanted to show you the basics of building a function, having variables, and using our name equals main block. One extra thing I want to show you is a concept of command line parameters. So here, I have been executing Python 3.7 hello world.py without any parameters, but I'm going to add a name here. So let's put in the name Doug. Python 3.7 hello world Doug. And I executed it, nothing really happened. Let's say I want to replace Chris with Doug. So I want to do a couple of things. So let's pretend we have a new variable. Command line parameter, or command line name equals not Doug. I want to pass that command line name to my function, and I'm going to call it name. I'm putting a little underscore just as a way to say this is my input name. So this variable, command line name, is currently set to not Doug, will be passed to my function and renamed effectively input. And I'm going to output the name input. Hopefully that's not too confusing as you watch this video. If it is, I will completely re-record it for you. And let's call it again with Doug, and you'll see I got not Doug because I set it to not Doug. All right, I want to get rid of all this other junk, so I'm going to comment out another function. You'll see how it grayed out in my editor. A little hashtag in front of it just so it comments out. And I still have not Doug. So what I need to do is I need to get access to that command line parameter. So we have a very cool package in Python called sys for system. So I'm using an import command, which is a Python interpreter. I'm going to use the sys package. For this video series, or for this video, I'm only going to show you one thing in the sys package. I'm going to show you how I can get access to those parameters. So let's do a little cheating down here. I'm going to print out something called sys.argv. So argv is the arguments on my command line. This is going to give a little cheat hint into the next video, which will show us a data type called an array. But you'll see I have now a new thing. So after this is my special code in my main function, I have a bracket, a string, hello world.py, and another string called Doug. Now Doug is because I put Doug here. If I change that to Chris, I'll see Chris. If I do another thing, like to code, I'll start seeing all of those parameters. Now, I want to get access to that. So I'm going to say command line name equals sys argv. And since we count in computers from 0, I know hello world is my 0th element, and the first parameter is 1. So I'm going to say sys argv1. And let's call Python 3.7. And we'll call hello world, and crap, I got an error. List index out of range. So you'll see my array here is hello world. Now it's being a little sneaky. See, I did it quick. I didn't pass a name here. But let's see if I do command line name as my name, Python 3.7, hello world.py, command line name, enter. Then in my function here at the top, it's the input of command line name. All right, this is bad practice to have code that will throw an error like this. Let's do a quick validation to make sure the length of that argv, the array of arguments, is more than the length is more than 2. So I'm going to do a quick if length, len is a built-in function that says the number of items in a container. In this case, in an array or a list, it tells you how many elements are in the list. So if the length of sysargv is greater than 2, then command line name is sysargv1. Aha, good. So I didn't have my error because I'm no longer looking for a first element if it doesn't exist. And so when I run this with command line name, I have my new element and I get not Doug. Get not Doug. Command line name, length is greater than, aha, or equal to 2. Not just greater than, because I only have 2. There we go. You see that I did a quick logic imperfection. And here I say if it's greater than or equal to 2. So now I can do another, I can pass a whole bunch of variables. All that matters is the first one, which is command line name. All right, that was a quick video on how we can write to the standard out, which is basically the output of an application. How we can do a quick organization of our Python code using variables, using strings, using string formatting, the print function so we can see what is going on in our application. And don't worry, in the next video, I'm going to teach you all about these data types like the list that we just looked at. And I'm going to show you why printing debugging information to the terminal is bad in the way I'm doing it here. So I taught you all this stuff about printing, and in the next lesson, I'm going to teach you why that's a bad idea.